from the Signature Bank Studios.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. You know, I'm really getting into the new Michelle Obama podcast. Oh, and you can't forget about Craig Robinson, her brother, too.
Yeah.
Even though he doesn't seem to talk much.
No, he doesn't. He's just kind of, the look on his face is this. How did I get here and how do I get out of this?
Yeah.
That's what I think every time I watch it. But have you learned a lot about yourself and about relationships, Dan?
Well, I'm not, it's not so much introspection. I'm just so fascinated by Michelle Obama as this towering intellectual figure and such a high social emotional IQ. I'm learning so much from her just about life. And so I want to know everything that I can know, soak up as much knowledge from her as I can. And so one of the things I learned in the most recent episode was what keeps her up at night. And this is part of her greatness, that she's thinking about things not from her perspective, because she's Michelle Obama, as she'll tell you. And she doesn't need to worry about the things the hoi polloi worry about, which is true. So she's worrying about them for them, worrying about those things for them. And, everybody wants to know what keeps her up at night, don't you?
I want to know what keeps her up at night.
Well, in this current climate for me, it's, what's happening to immigrants. So it's not the fear for myself anymore. I drive around in a 4-car motorcade with a police escort.
Are you here
I'm
illegally?
Michelle Obama. I do still worry about my daughters in the world, even though they are somewhat recognizable. So my fears are for what I know is happening out there in streets all over the city. And now that we have leadership that is sort of indiscriminately determining who belongs and who doesn't, and we know that those decisions aren't being made with courts and with due process, and, that it's being made like this cop that pulled my brother over when he was 12.
Oh my God.
You don't look like somebody that belongs. I can determine just by looking at you that you're a good person or you're not a good person. And knowing that there's so much bias and so much racism and so much ignorance that fuels those kind of choices, I worry for people of color all over this country. And I don't know that we will have the advocates to protect everybody. And that frightens me. It keeps me up at night.
Now, when you say it keeps you up at night, do you mean that figuratively or literally you're up at night thinking about 700,000, Tom Homan mentioned yesterday, 700,000 criminals, either convicted criminals or those awaiting trial, who are on Homan's target list as public safety threats and or terrorist watch list individuals, the public safety threats? Is that who you're talking about and thinking about? So it's your understanding that ICE agents are descending on big cities and small towns and just sizing people up. Mm-hmm. That guy looks like an illegal immigrant. That girl looks like an illegal immigrant. Is that how they're doing it?
Or they're going to start with illegals and move on to the black community, like MSNBC said.
Yeah.
Or it's just going to be that. That's what I heard her from saying. And again, promoting that cops are racist murderers. They're not going to get her because she's in a motorcade, but, they're going to get others.
Well, that's the sort of thing where I think they're doing Trump's bidding for him. As Kyle Peterson, editorial board member at the Wall Street Journal, noted, 12% of voters in 2024 exit polls said immigration was their top issue. Trump won 89% of them. 32% cited the economy as their top issue, and Trump did 81% of them. It sort of gives you a pretty good roadmap in terms of what your core deliverables are. And certainly on the former, there is substantial delivery that has occurred in the last 100 days, the first 100 days, I should say. Neil Ferguson, writing in the Free Press, went back and looked at all the videos that we brought to you over the course of the campaign, those scripted videos that Trump did on one topic after the other between December of 2022 and December of 2023 that were sort of reintroduced in the closing months of the campaign last year. and he sort of categorizes them simply as providing the almost like the contract with America redux, Trump style, protecting students, identitarians on campus, and K-12, all the campuses, cementing fair and reciprocal trade deals, using impoundment to cut waste, stop inflation, crush the deep state, ending citizenship for children of illegals, which is being taken up by the Supreme Court, reversing DEI in the federal government, slashing trade deficits, protecting American workers, protecting Americans from ESG in the corporate sector, protecting children from, left-wing gender politics in schools and sports, stopping China from owning America. Neil Ferguson said on those counts, by a review of that list and what has occurred in the first 100 days, this is what Neil Ferguson writes, is a noted Harvard-educated historian. One day historians will refer to this as the most consequential to-do list in American history, and in his first 100 days back in the White House, Donald Trump has crushed that list. So, according to Neil Ferguson, he's doing pretty good with his honey-do list. Let's find out what Scott McKay thinks. Scott McKay is the publisher of the Hayride, also senior at the American Spectator, and author of books Racism, Revenge, and Ruin, as well as the novel King of the Jungle. Scott, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. So, do you concur with one Neil Ferguson?
For the most part, yes. I think some of the things that Trump has promised to do, he hasn't quite done yet, and I don't know that it's necessarily his fault. And the thing that's kind of sticking in my head about that would be Ukraine, where he said, look, we're going to end this war. And it should have been over already, but for the fact that for some reason these two sides can't seem to get together on a peace agreement that is pretty obviously going to take shape at some point, and yet for whatever reason they're not ready to make it happen yet. And the Ukrainians haven't had Crimea since 2014, and some sort of way they're like, no, we're going to keep fighting until we get it. Nobody thinks that that's a serious position for Ukraine to take, and yet they're continuing to take it. And I don't blame Trump for not being able to make peace as a result of that.
Well, I mean, Putin is hardly a good faith player in this either, and I mean, and he may still have designs on Kyiv, given the posture of this administration, and that is less fanciful than I think Ukraine's designs on Crimea are.
Well, Dan, let me say that it goes without saying that Putin is the bad guy here, right?
Yeah.
We all know that.
Yeah.
But as Trump said, Obama gave him Crimea. Like, Obama didn't do anything when he took Crimea in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's like, okay, well, what's a realistic way to make peace? And I think Trump has presented this, in the only really realistic way that anybody has done, making a serious effort to at least stop the fighting. And if you really, what I would guess is the Euros are telling Ukraine, you need to hang in there, because either Trump's going to go or Trump's going to change his mind, and you'll get your weapons, and we'll keep this thing fighting. And of course, they want to keep this war going at America's expense more than anything else.
Well, right. I mean, I'm not
that of Ukraine.
I'm not blaming Trump for not being able to forge a peace deal, given the players and the dynamics. I'm not blaming him either. I mean, I take your point. But obviously, when he engages in the hyperbole that is his want of, I'll get this done in a day, or whatever he said during the campaign, 3 days, a weekend, I mean, that just sends a signal that he's in a rush to get something done, and that, and Putin's like, well, I'm not in a rush, especially with how things are going and what I'm willing to do to sustain the incursion. And, I mean, it's sort of a bit of a tell, and it makes him look like he's not delivering.
No, that's right. And that would be the one kind of glaring thing that you'd say, well, he hasn't done it yet, but it's 100 days. You can't judge the guy just based on that. And so, like, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves in judging him based on this kind of arbitrary, category or criteria that was set up because FDR had, 100 days that was used to mark the beginning of his administration. I mean, Trump has months more to go before this is even, not the very beginning of his tenure here. And, Congress hasn't really helped out with legislation yet because you've got a very tenuous hold on the House. And so, you're trying to do one big, beautiful bill because that's really the only way you're going to be able to make it work when you only have 220 votes in the House. And so really 100 days is hard to use as a proper thing. I mean, you're probably looking at 8 months rather than 100 days to really judge it. Having said that, with what Trump can do with the things that he controls, it's been an absolute whirlwind. It's been certainly, I think, the most productive administration, certainly in my lifetime. I mean, I think so far that Trump has been more consequential even than Ronald Reagan was.
Really?
At least to this point. I mean, let's.
Well, how so? I mean, obviously
we'll
with the border and immigration, he's done a wonderful job. I mean, that's what I voted for. I don't,
Yes.
The people sleeping in the police stations, that's over.
I think the reformation of government is certainly proceeding at a pace that Ronald Reagan would have dreamed about. We haven't killed the Department of Education just yet, but we've certainly gutted it. And I think that is, has to be universally recognized as a good thing if your name is not Randy Weingarten. So that part is good. I think a lot has been done with respect to reorienting the intelligence communities and the FBI, although that project is absolutely nowhere near completion. But, the fact that it's being attempted is a big deal because we went administration after administration and nobody even addressed the rot there. So, I think that I would generally agree with Ferguson that, this has been a blockbuster administration so far, and 90% negative media really hasn't touched Trump much on the from the standpoint of his approval rating. Now, the economy is going to need to show some improvement, certainly before the midterms. And that's still kind of up in the air. We know what the strategy is, and we'll see if it works out. Obviously, you're going to figure something out with China. But again, nobody has tried. And here's, Trump at least is executing a strategy to reorient trade with China in a way that's more beneficial to the United States. And this is something nobody else has even tried. So I think, you got to let him cook a little bit on that. And certainly I think the strategy has the potential to work and a high potential to work. So, I'm not going to criticize anything that he's done on economy and trade at this point, even though there are some people that will.
Something else that I've mentioned before, Kim Strassel picked up on it as well, which is despite the frustrations with these federal district court judges that are overstepping their authority and enjoining all sorts of Trump initiatives. What he's doing is using, now this is not without risk, but he's using his 6-3 advantage in the Supreme Court, which sometimes turns out not to be an advantage because of Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett. I understand, but what he's doing is he is pushing for structural changes, like what Ferguson mentioned, the birthright citizenship case that's going to the high court, and I think has maybe a 50-50 shot of a proper interpretation of that clause in the 14th Amendment to end birthright citizenship, using his advantage to codify understandings of the law and understandings of the powers of the co-equal branches. And again, there may be some setbacks, even at the high court level, but this is one of the things that he is doing, particularly in the absence of Congress finding the wherewithal to act in furtherance of the power that it possesses. And this is really consequential, and it's sort of under-discussed.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think the left has greatly overplayed its hand by suing on every single thing that the Trump administration is doing. Because, the problem with this is, you sue to try to stop these things, and then you lose, and now there's precedent for a Republican president to go ahead and make the change that really the people want made. So, and it's a strategy of theirs that I think is driven more by fundraising than by actual politics or policy. And you can look at all the way back when Chuck Schumer caved, I guess, on the reconciliation. And he was, well, if we have a government shutdown, then we can't go to the courts, right? Like, that's what he told Chris Hayes at MSNBC, and he gave away the game, right? And then, of course, ever since then, there have been lawsuits on every single action that the Trump administration has done. That, it's a sort of a desperate strategy, and it's one reason why the Democrats' popularity has utterly collapsed. They lost the center altogether because, your average American looks at this and says, wait a minute, like, this guy got elected to do these things, and here you are going to court, which is sort of a dirty way to stop it, right? Like, you're not making your arguments in front of the American people. And then you lose in court because that Supreme Court is 6-3. I mean, I'm not satisfied with Roberts and Barrett, but let's understand that the things that have come out of them occasionally on these cases, these are all like temporary injunctions.
Yeah, right.
Like, none of this stuff is on the merits. And the odds are really good that when all of these cases finally reach the Supreme Court on the merits, you're going to have an end to all of this judicial activism and judicial usurpation in these lower courts. And when that happens, like, there's nothing left. And what's a very, very good chance of happening, if this stuff just continues to play out slowly in the courts, is you're going to agitate the American people to such an extent that nobody's going to want to vote Democrat in the midterms. And then Trump gets, 10, 15 seats in the House and maybe adds a couple Senate seats, and all of a sudden there's nothing that they can do to stop the second 2 years of the Trump term being even more turbocharged than this. I mean, that's like a real possibility when the Democrats have a 21% approval rating in Congress.
All right, well, let's end on that happy thought. Scott McKay, publisher of the Hayride, senior editor at the American Spectator, author of the book Racism, Revenge, and Ruin, as well as the novel King of the Jungle. Scott, thank you as always.
Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.
You too, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Hi, I'm Ken Mariotti, owner of Woodland Windows and Doors, a third-generation family-owned business since 1969. We know you're bombarded by choices when shopping for new windows or doors, so we're inviting you to experience the Woodland difference. For decades, we have been transforming living spaces with Marvin Windows, a fifth-generation family business. Marvin replacement windows have been known to increase the warmth of your cold rooms by 10 degrees. Think about that, 10 degrees warmer. When you welcome Woodland into your home, you will get a product expert to transform your